Hi, everyone. Welcome. Can I have another round of applause? Thank you so much. That was awesome. Also, can everyone wish my mother Mary happy birthday? Happy birthday, Mary. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So these are my notes. Oh, thank you. Oh. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mary. I love it. Happy birthday to you. Thank you so much. So it means more this year than ever before. As you know, the last time I was here, I was saying that my dad was in ailing health. My father passed away December 24th. So I lost my dad on Christmas Eve. So that was very special to send to my mother as a message, and I greatly appreciate it. Your kindness, thank you so much. Thank you for that. Your kindness as a group has always stuck out to me. And before I get too emotional about it, it matters to me to come here. These were my notes for tonight, by the way. That's how prepared I am. So these were my notes, because you know how I do this. I don't pull stuff off the internet. I don't Google things. I don't AI. I don't look things up on the internet. The way that I've constructed my information is through books. So I brought some of my favorite books tonight. I was asked to do this presentation, about 6.5 days ago? So in 6.5 days, I ran through the house. I ran through 3 different banks. I got into my safety deposit boxes so that I could bring out the all-stars of my collection. I've been collecting Native American jewelry since I was 14 years old. I borrowed the first $40 from my father, never paid him back. And you remember, it's this ring. So it started with this. And why I show the camera tonight is because I am doing a pre-recorded video for my YouTube channel. So you could go over to my YouTube channel like you did the last time and watch these things up close, because I didn't do a projection for them. So you can watch this on my channel later on tonight or tomorrow. The last time I was here, I was begging you to get me to 10,000 subscribers. Whatever you guys did and whoever you prayed to that night, I'm now at 15,382 subscribers. So the word has spread, and that was within 1 month. And it all came from one video of an unboxing. So I'd like all of you to go home and take a look at that. So I just wanted to say thank you again as I cleared out the emotions. Thank you again for being so kind to me and being kind to each other, because that's the most important part of small organizations like this. Seeing through your differences and seeing through issues and resolving them is a fantastic thing. So I appreciate that very much, and your kindness to me has always been outstanding. I brought some samples of some different types of turquoise. I don't know which one this is. I'm sure there's an expert here who can tell me exactly what mine this came out of. I don't know, but you're going to tell me when you come up here later on tonight. So that's the first one, and it's awfully flashed out on the camera. And then this one, I've had so many people tell me what mine this came out of, and I've had to gently correct the experts, because clearly marked on the back of it, there's an old paper label from around 1932 to around 1935. This is Cerrillos turquoise. It is authentic, it's been certified, and when you look at the way that turquoise grew, look at that thin little layer of the turquoise on that matrix stone. It is an unbelievable feat of Mother Nature to then take these stones like all of you do, cut and polish them, and turn them into these magnificent creations that then become body adornment. Most of the items I brought this evening are sacred to the Native American cultures that they came from. A few of the cuff bracelets definitely belong in museums, and one of the cuff bracelets at the end was actually deaccessioned from the first People's Museum in the United States, and I fought for it at a national auction to bring it to you tonight. So it's never been out before, and I promise you a great big surprise. When we talk about loose stones in my collection, I have collected turquoise here and there and everywhere over the last 30 years of my life. I go to estate sales, auctions, tag sales, yard sales, flea markets. Every day of my life I get calls for people who then say to me, I have old stones from my father. I have old stones from my mother. I was very close friends with Walt and Betty at the Crystal Pocket. Does anyone remember the Crystal Pocket and Walt and Betty? So we have about 3 people. Walt and Betty were magnificent people that were brilliant and amazing and became dear friends of mine from a very early age. And that was before I was even driving. My father, ex-military, ex-army, loved his family so much, and he said, anything you want to do, I'll do it with you. I said, I want to go to the Crystal Pocket. I want to go and collect stones. I was 13 years old. 13 years old. That's the first time I had been to the Crystal Pocket. These are going to be so flashed out, but you'll have to come up and take a look at some of the turquoise. And I don't know how big Larimar wound up in the collection, but there's a Larimar here tonight. So you know how that happens. It's only 24.4 grams only. As I'll refer to my notes again, let me get that out of the way. The books that I wanted to talk about, there are several that are really important. Turquoise Unearthed, and most in this book are untreated. How many people here have seen Lander Blue Turquoise in person? In person? Nobody. Nobody? No. Seriously. Okay, that is the single rarest turquoise in the world is Lander Blue. Still to this day, it's still the rarest turquoise. Ever hear of a hat mine? You should put a hat over the mine because that's how small it is. Technically, this was a hat mine. So in this book, there are the most amazing examples of the different mines of turquoise. So I highly recommend, if you don't have this in your library, does anyone have this book in their gemological library? Turquoise Unearthed. So check that one out. Another thing, this indigenous people and Indian terminology, I still consider Native Americans Indians because they're Native American Indian. When you look at books like this that say Indian silversmithing, that's what it was. They're Native American Indians. They are also now termed indigenous people. We're allowed to use both terms. There's nothing degrading about that. And I asked my partner, Jeremy, who is like 1/8 or 1/9 Cherokee, he said, I'm Indian. I said, okay, then we're gonna go with it. So this book talks about the technical skill that it took to create these pieces. Indian Silversmithing by Ben Hunt. If you don't have it, look it up. The one that I go to the most, that I talk with groups like this about, because you're the gem experts, I'm the novice. I'm not a gem expert. I don't know the turquoise mines. I'm not going to claim to know the turquoise mines. But what I challenge people all the time about is the lecture series about what mines they come from. And the reason for this is quite simple. This book is Turquoise, the Gem of Centuries. Outstanding book. A book that any serious collector of Native American jewelry has to have in their collection. You might ask yourself, why is that important to us in gemological terms? Well, since I came to a gemological and a lapidary group, how to cut stones and where they came from, the inside of the book shows the different locations and the stones and the mines that they came from, right? So someone could say, I'm going to take this turquoise ring right here, and I'm going to match this up with this book. And I'm going to see what mine this came from. First of all, I'll stop you there. The reason for it is quite simple. That has an oxidation on it from the 1930s. This is oxidized now. It doesn't look the same it did when it was out of the mine. You're shaking your head. Yes, Evelyn. A voice of experience in the crowd. Also think about this. This book is from 1975. 1975. And you look at the photograph and you say, boy, they sure look really similar, don't they? They sure do, but their matrix and the mother stones that they grew in were all different. Let's cover another thing. This book was printed in 1975. Look at how yellow the pages are. The pages are extremely yellow. So what has happened over time? The yellow has shifted the color of the blue in the book to a bluish green. So those that lecture people on what mine it is, and I know more than you, and you know less than me, and I'm the expert in the room, congratulations, because you're both wrong. Because this book has yellowed over 25, 35, 40 years of being on a shelf. So don't use this as a guide and lecture somebody else. No one likes to be talked at, I'll tell you that much right now. Jewelry and turquoise jewelry. So taking turquoise like you do, turning it into magic, and then making it into jewelry, you do part of the process, and then a silversmith like me then takes your stones that you labor over and turns them into wearable body adornment, most of the time sacredly used in amongst these tribes. I didn't want to talk about specifics this evening on Hopi, Santo Domingo, Zuni, Navajo. I could lecture you about all 4 of those for literally 3 hours and you'd never be bored. I'd lose none of you over a lecture series on any of the tribes. The reason why is because my passion outweighs a lot of times the terminology that I'll use and the terms that I'll use. I'm so happy that you're smiling. You really do encourage me to go crazy. Arizona highways. Does anyone remember Arizona highways? Sure. Okay, I have literally 1,200 pounds of Arizona highways. The reason why is these books back then were $3.75 in the 70s. Probably more than what most groceries cost for a week back in the 70s, as we'll all remember. My mom was telling me about some of the, the basic bills and rent and expenses back then, and I said $3.75 was an awful lot of money, especially for a publication. These are invaluable tools to learn how your stones were then turned into jewelry, and the different artists and the different aesthetics that were used in the designs of Native American jewelry. Highly recommend to hold on to those because the value has gone up. Let me talk about this one really quick, and I guess I'm going to do a book review tonight. Who knew? The reason why I brought this is I don't like certain terms in jewelry. As a jewelry historian, I have to be careful not to pick on certain things. I don't like the term book piece. It drives me up a wall. It's like nails on a chalkboard. Well, I have that, and it's a book piece. I don't care, What I care about is the authenticity of what I'm looking at. So I refer to this book, which is one of the Bibles of Southwestern jewelry. I'm forgetting this side of the room. Southwestern silver jewelry, and this is by Paula Baxter. Why I refer to this one is, on the inside page, it shows some of the earliest and rarest Navajo cuff bracelets that were ever produced. We're talking pre-1900 by about 10 or 15 years. Why I show you that is one of the earliest bracelets, and it's noted in the didactic in the book, is the simple twisted cuff bracelet that looks blacksmith forged. It doesn't look like a silversmith created it. I have the bracelet as a book piece to show you in person. When you look at these things, I think one of the most interesting parts of specifically Navajo and Native American jewelry for me personally is some of the most simplest of forms are the most expensive, the most sought after, and the ones that belong in museums and need to go back to the tribes themselves. Should have never made it off of the reservations. We're definitely through the pawn system and unfortunately not returned to the families. When you look at this, you'll see that there's a deep twist in the silver. What's happened is when you look on the outside of the bracelet, blacksmith forging doesn't work with sterling silver, does it? It doesn't. The silver work hardens, and when they twisted this, it broke the crystalline structure of the silver. Crystalline structure of silver does exist. Like a paper clip, you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It breaks. The crystals give up. You can see that the crystals were under so much torque and so much stress that they cut this out of one single ingot. They took a chisel, they hammered it down the center of the ingot, and they twisted it to make this cuff bracelet. Talk about skill, talk about craft, talk about authenticity. Does not belong in my hand, belongs in a national museum. That's where eventually it will head. Are there reproductions of this? Very few. Why? Because they can't do it today. Because they can't figure it out. There's magic in these pieces. They're astounding. So when I show people this, I say, which one's more expensive? And they always fail. Is it this one or is it this one? That one. Every single person fails every single time. They say, this is more important than this. And I said, if you're Sonny and Cher from 1960, this is more important than this. If you're a purist collector in a museum and an authentic collector that's poured their life into this, this will always be the all-star of any collection. It's the foundation of a collection. How I found this, I was at the thrift store. This is about 14 years ago, and it was $1.99. And I didn't know what it was when I bought it. Put it in my hand, just thought, it's sterling, and I love this. And I put it on at the counter, and I just looked at the lady, and I took the tag off, and I handed it to her, and I'm like, I'm definitely taking it for sure. It just felt right. And then about 8 years later, I was looking through my books. Bingo, there it was. So then I started doing the deep dive. It took me over a year to make sure that it's completely right. It took a long time. You want to talk about chisel carving and blacksmithing in when they set stones? This bracelet, does anyone want to guess how much I was offered for this bracelet? It's 4 stones, sterling silver, and turquoise. It's Navajo. I'll give you a little hint. It's around 1895, if that helps you out. So does anyone? 5,000? Pretty close. Anyone else want to take a stab at it?
8,000.
Oh, Mari, $9,000 is the standing offer. And you can see what happened. Didn't faze me. I bought it at a pawn shop for $90. $90. So, but what's interesting about this is the stones in this one that alternate back and forth talk about an extremely exotic mine that seemingly nobody knows. It's very washed out on my camera, but nobody knows what mine this is because I've asked so many people. This one, they were threaded through the ear as earrings. Each stone has a little drill hole. They were threaded through the ear as earrings. That's the way it started life. And then a Navajo silversmith took those stones out of earrings and turned this into a cuff bracelet. The holes are still there. Anyone else would say, well, that's damaged. That's not right. No, it's not damaged. They were earrings. Do you also notice one thing about this that you won't notice in other pieces that are slightly more contemporary? Can you look at the surface? Can everyone see a surface there? Mm-hmm. Can you see? Flashy, flashy, right? Flashy, flashy. This isn't a decky. This is still worth a small fortune. This is spiderweb, turquoise, for a layman's term, if I can get away with that. But basically, high polished. This is from the late 1960s, signed by Adeki on the back. Look at the matte finish on the one on the right, and look at the high polish on the one on the left. You can see it from across the room, right? Yeah, everyone's shaking their head. Yeah, from 20 feet away. This is not polished turquoise. This was just sanded down, and guess what? It polished itself over time. Someone wore this for over 60 years and passed it down generation to generation. It may have been worn over 100 years, everybody. Isn't that an amazing feat? Again, let's look at the construction. So on the inside, why they're important, and I get stuck on this one. It's chisel carved. So this is an ingot, which is silver, and poured into an ingot from probably melted down coins at that time. Who knows? I wasn't there. They took a cold chisel, like a big hammer and a big chisel, and they cut those 2 lines on the inside of the ingot. They hammered that apart, and they made that spread out like a blacksmith again. Let's talk about blacksmithing and silversmithing, hand in hand with the Native American culture. Think about it and think about why. Horse-related items. You need to be a blacksmith before you're a silversmith. So they opened that up. They then hammered this down, so you can see that the profile of the top is slightly thinner than the profile of the shank. So always look and attention to detail with pieces. And then they did their rope twist border and their little raindrops, and they did stamping on the side and a small application on the side. So always look at the finish. Remember when I talked about the work hardness of things? The crystalline structure is clearly evident on the inside of this. You can see that there's those little stress lines on the inside of the bracelet. Always pay attention to detail. Blacksmith forged again. Notice that the center one has a small drill hole, and these are not polished as well on the terminals. So this bracelet is around 1897, 1898 Navajo. Doesn't belong in my hands yet again, but here it is. See how the top is, again, they blacksmith forged the silver. They cut those little tendrils. They used a hammer. They removed the metal at the top, and then they curled those back. So blacksmith forged. The stones in this are remarkable as well. There's quartz crystal inclusions in the finials and on the terminals. Incredible. Navajo on this one, 1900. You start to get a little bit later. Value is still way up, around $4,500 for a bracelet that looks like this now. Even though it looks so contemporary, 1960, 1970, but the way these are constructed really gets me. I want to show my viewers on YouTube because I feel like I'm leaving them out. This is clearly more contemporary, but look at the way they cut these stones to be so close together, almost like a cobblestone pattern, spiny oyster and turquoise, and beautifully channel set. So the stones are like side by side. Look, you can't even get a little dollar bill in between that. Talk about true craft, and to be so asymmetrical yet so perfect. It's just an amazing feat. Really gets me going. And then we'll do a little comparison. I bought this from Dan. at your show years and years and years ago. I miss Dan so much. He sold this to me for $800. Couldn't get the money out fast enough. Why? Wanted the biggest one I could find. I wanted the great biggest one. And Dan had bought this out west. It's fully artist signed on the inside, sterling silver. He was so excited that I bought it because I had badgered him for 3 shows. So for 3 shows. And then this one is the earlier version. This one's from around the 1940s. And it's the 5-row. Normally you'll find these in 1 row. So for my collection, I just tried to elevate and get the best I could. Notice how the stones aren't stabilized or treated because they've started to all turn different colors. There's a blue-green, there's a green, there's a light blue. Probably, you know, if you want to say Kingman, I guess I could say it on this one to feel comfortable with it. No, because everyone always says every turquoise is Kingman. Do you ever notice that? Very interesting. So this is an early Concho belt. It's second phase. When I first purchased it, I thought it was first phase. It's actually second phase, so it puts it into around the 1920 time period. Could be later teens, definitely not after the 1930s. And this is a remarkable work of silver as well. On its original leather, completely beautiful copper stays on the back, and you can see the oxidation on that copper. And then on that leather, how those have been on there for at least a good 70 years. Concho belts, I kind of stayed away from them because the expense was so big and very unwearable. Yes?
How'd you hold out?
This one, this is interesting. So I'm glad you asked. I thought there was 3. There's 4 collections that are here tonight with us, and I'm glad you asked that, John. And you know what? I need you as a negotiator because you're getting a bar stool for $100. You're a hell of a negotiator. But yeah, and by the way, I do this for free as I did the last time. So use that money for that. You were going to pay me for an honorarium towards the bar stool. So, all right. So let's be honest about it. I'm glad you got that. So there's Thelma George. So this necklace right here is Thelma George. If you'd like to do research on Thelma George, she was an African-American woman who lived in Cleveland. She was, I believe, an ambassador to the United Nations. Very important, philanthropic, very wealthy, very well-known woman. I think she had something to do with the news as well, I think. But Thelma George. And Thelma George, I had a gentleman, let's see here, this was 9 years ago. What was his name? I'm going to draw a blank on his name. I'll think about it as soon as I drive home. He was set up at Hartville. And I looked at this and I said, I have to have it. I don't care how much it is. I'm going home with it. Have to have it. It's the best I've seen. Best squash blossom I've seen in decades. And he said, you got good taste. That's Thelma George's. And I said, I want a signed letter and I want a photograph with her with it on. Sure enough, he produced a signed letter and he found a photograph with Thelma George with my squash blossom on. So I fought to keep it. It is the finest and the largest in my collection. The way they crafted the blossoms and the way they crafted these beads, as I digress from your question, the fact of bench beads and Navajo pearls, I want to talk about that for 15 seconds. Bench beads are these. They're the hollow formed, it's like these. They're the hollow formed, very thin, very fragile, mass-produced, machine-cranked out beads. They were producing them by the 60s, by the way. We even think that as historians, they were producing them as early as the 1950s. So those are considered bench beads. They're hollow, they're tinny, they're mass-produced, they're on every squash blossom you see, right? Not Thelma George's. And we're not talking about the dime versions either. These are mercury dimes from the 1940s that were turned into beads. How do you know they're mercury dimes? Because the outside of the dime is still on the beads. When you hold this one, this is pounds of silver. This isn't just like a few ounces. This is pounds of silver. This is from 1943. The latest date on the dimes is 1942. This is from 1943. And the naja, or the bottom pendant, extremely early. So not from that time period. Sand cast, extremely old, and they borrowed it from another necklace. So extremely important to the Navajo tribe as well. So when you ask me, go with the question again, because I've completely lost it.
The belt.
The belt. So that's interesting. Came from Mary Ellen McDermott's collection in Fairlawn. So I have Thelma George here, Mary Ellen McDermott here. Give me a second, I'll think of the other ones. Give me 1 minute because the other ones, I'm going there. I'll be 1 second. But that came out of Fairlawn, out of Mary Ellen McDermott's. There's 4 collections within my collection. And great question, because a lot of times people always say to me, how do you find the pieces? I don't. They find me every single time. Now, I have to put my money where my mouth is when that happens, because I have to fend off other people. So, I have to. It's my full-time job. So, but for Thelma George's necklace, I've never had this one out. This has never seen the light of day, and I have only worn it once. But so, getting back to the Navajo pearl thing, those are Navajo pearls. Those are clearly hand-constructed, very deep-walled silver, completely hand-labored over, sanded down and filed down. You can easily tell the difference by touching them. That's the one thing AI and a robot will never be able to do. And I'm glad for it, because it'll keep me in business. I've often said too, if you put this in front of AI, it might say, that's a squash blossom from 1970. No, it's a squash blossom from the late 1930s. And 10 times more valuable than one from the 1960s that has turquoise plastered all over it. As a silversmith, I marvel at the elegance of these flowers. When you look from the side and you look at the thickness of the gauge of the metal and the elegant nature of that flower that transitions into that stay that goes through there, the naja is also completely hand constructed out of silver sheet, not cast, not lazy. I marvel at the silver work sometimes more than the stones, but I brought these in because I wanted to talk about the fact that coral to the Native American cultures was considered red gold. They called it red gold. They did, because they traded for it, because they loved it. So I bring in 2 of my red coral necklaces, and you can see that this right here is the only turquoise beaded necklaces that I've kept over the last 30 years of my collection. How many more have I seen? Thousands and thousands. The one red coral necklace is 4 strands. I was offered, I say this for a price, I was offered $3,200 for just that necklace. They're pump drilled. They're hand drilled. They're pre-1910. How many more are there in the world? I've never seen a 4-strand pump drilled by hand. I haven't seen them even in a museum. So that's why when I look in these collections, I'm very specific and very particular with the things that I'm willing to spend money on. Yes?
So why did you keep those 4 turquoise necklaces?
The ones that are on here,
Yes.
the color, and the age of the way that they're spaced with other shell beads, completely hand drilled. So conically drilled, usually from the front and then the back, so the hole doesn't break the stone. Mm-hmm. So you'll see a bigger hole on each side, and then it meets in the middle. So pump drilled by hand. Mm-hmm. And you have to be very attuned to how that's done. And the only reason why on these, that's why on those, if that makes sense.
When you say
Yeah.
pump drilled, what
Yeah.
do you mean?
Hand drill, so pump. So a lot of times, technically, into the books, it'll show you how they drilled the beads. It was the pump drill, so it had like that string, and it was like a, you see what I mean? So he knows. So bow drill, pump drill, same thing. Mm-hmm. Hand pumped or hand drilled by a dowel, and then think about this. Think about the abrasives like sand that were then put in with the dowel and then pump drilled. So you have the dowel and then the string and then the drill. You just did it by hand. I mean, I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to do it on one bead, let alone I don't know, let alone probably 500 beads. I don't think I'd do it. But these are all separate necklaces too. These are all separate. But all right, so there's that. And then we look at, so we go from this in my collection to this. So, but everyone loves this. I always get such rave reviews when I wear this. But Santo Domingo tab necklace, that's exactly what it's called. And the turquoise is just absolutely gorgeous and exceptional. And I love that they drilled these and then wired it all together. So there is no metal, no clumsiness of metal. So I'll go from like basic metal to that. This is an assemblage that when people ask me, because a lot of times I've been asked, how do you wear and enjoy your stuff? Like a Christmas tree, I pile it on, the more the merry, the more the merry. Talk about, me blending in. I'd have to rearrange my DNA at this point, So, but this was like one of my kind of turquoise stories. So multiple generations of not only family members, but collections. And then what I loved about this was the different kinds of turquoise, far more contemporary on the top, and that kind of mellow green. When you look at these stones, gemologically, there are quartz inclusions and little belly buttons of quartz stones that are in the quote matrix, or in the turquoise. And you see that very frequently, like on the edge of this one, like literally, 20% of that stone is quartz rather than turquoise. I'm just in love with it. And then the silver work, how could you not? And then this one, for the little snake eyes turquoise. And I loved the turquoise in that one, but I would put that together, and that's the way I wore these 4 pieces together when I wore them. Probably took me, since you called or texted about this, it took me since then to put that back together. So, yeah.
What's the top of that? Is it
That's a brooch. It's a pin. It's a pin and a pin and pendant, both. Yeah, and artisan signed. When I got into I couldn't help myself, but the beaded moccasins have always completely thrilled me. This one's 1890, and you might say to yourself, why is there only one? I don't know. Went to the estate sale and they only had one, and I said, I don't know what's going on here, but there's a story there, and I didn't care. It didn't matter. I said, you know what? This is a sacred thing that is coming home with me. So I put acid-free paper inside and I stuffed it. It's very pliable leather as well. The beadwork, absolutely exceptional. I have another pair that I didn't want to bring because I don't like to touch them. The whole bottoms are beaded as well. So the top's beaded, the side's beaded, the bottom is completely beaded. So when we talk about labors of love to decorate things, and to delineate people's importance in the tribes. We're 30 minutes in, and I haven't even really scratched the surface. And I don't like talking at you. These are baby moccasins, by the way, and they were had to have. Didn't care, and they're totally authentic and absolutely extraordinary. Circa 1900 on those. 3 more squash blossoms, and I wanted to do, during this, I wanted to do like a good, better, and best. But that's not the kind of people you are. So I didn't want to term this like good, better, and best. But this is the good. I actually should start with the middle one. This is the better. So they're slightly out of sync. So this is the better. It is turquoise. Those are bench beads. They're not Navajo pearls. But that one's from around the late 1950s. Look at the color of the turquoise, by the way. That's why I was seduced by this. Also, as a silversmith, you know the drill. It's all about craft. Look at the gauge of the metal on the flowers as well. Not as good as Thelma George's, but almost as good. And look at the bezels, how tight they are. Look at the skill that it took this artist to create this. It's a labor of love. That's totally a labor of love. This, so that was the better. This is the good. So this one looks really, really, really good. It's not as good. It's much more commercial. It's still beautiful. There's nothing wrong with it. And I think why I liked this one is because the way the stones were set on the inside of the flowers rather than on the head of the flower. So I was always kind of like, oh, it's different. It's a different enough approach to a traditional squash blossom for me to commit it to my collection. And then this one, again, use of Navajo pearls and a beautiful squash blossom. This is late, there's a little debate, but this is late 1915 into 1925. So we can circuit date this one and get away with it. Incredible. Look how compact it is. See how they shrunk it all down? They didn't space it all out and make it look like it's a great big thing. When you go into these books and you look at authentic black and white photographs of these pieces on the Native American people, you would see this necklace on someone. It was never meant to be in Akron, Ohio. It was just never meant to be here, and yet here it is. But look at the simplistic construction and the gauge of the metal. Do you see how thick it is, how robust it is, and that these Navajo pearls aren't bench beads that were cranked out by a machine, lathe turned and then soldered together, and junk. These are labored over, each one completely hand constructed. And then the naja, very, very simple.
That's for a young person.
No, this is a full-grown adult person. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Not a child's at all.
No,
Absolutely, yeah.
Didn't mean to.
Oh, yeah, but no, it's a full-grown adult person. And in the books, Mari, that's a great question, though. In the books, they do have very small versions. Absolutely. This is not one of them. I don't know if you all have seen the Loloma earrings in real life, but I brought these as Native American jewelry. They're sand cast. Anyone want to throw out a value on these? They're just simple little stick-style earrings, just sand cast. 1,000. Anyone else want to throw it out? He was Charles Loloma, a Hopi silversmith. Anyone else want to take a guess? 3,000. Warming up. Getting close.
Are they just strips of metal?
They're just strips of silver. Just strips of silver. Yep, just tiny little strips of silver that are just, got a couple little lines. Couple little lines cut on them. Just sand cast, real simple. They're from 1961. Any other guesses to make me feel really good?
5,000.
Standing offer, 15,000.
Wow.
15,000.
Wow.
So what happened was I put these on eBay years ago. Just out of college, went to Medina's Antique Mall, bought them for $18. The only reason why I bought them for $18 is because I knew they were old. I knew they were sand cast. I knew that they had a great energy to them. What I've never based my collections on, or the things that I've bought for resale over the years, is what everybody else does. I've never done it. Never gonna do it. That's both good and bad. And I put these on eBay in haste. I listed them for $9.99, $9.99. Listed them as Native American Indian sand cast early silver earrings. That's all I said. I knew they were early, knew they were sand cast. Didn't know the little hash marks on the back. These tiny little hash marks on the back. This tiny, I'm trying to get in there so you guys can see it later when you get home. These tiny little hash marks on the back. That's Charles Loloma's signature. I didn't know. But you know what I did? I was smart enough as an artist and a photographer to take a photograph of it. Guess what? 6 different people sent offers immediately. Within 1 hour of them listed, they were already at $275. And the top offer by the time I knew I had made a mistake was $5,800. $5,800 in the auction now. I said, what in the hell do I have? So sure enough, I ended the auction because I knew I'd made a mistake. You're allowed to end your auctions. You're allowed to say, I'm not selling it. I made a mistake. So then, and only then did I do my research, and there was a retrospective of Loloma's work. These are one of, I think, 4 pairs that are known. So, and his earliest work from 1961. So Charles Loloma earrings don't look like much, but they could surprise you. Imagine finding those in a Goodwill jewelry jar. So, all right, turquoise rings. Because I love them, and you can all see these when you come up. Many different mines and many different time periods. I know you love that one, Mari. Yeah. And then that one is just exceptional. So we'll look at turquoise rings. Does anyone love fire agates here? Oh, yeah. Oh, do you really? Okay. So what I wanted to do is, because I don't want you to ever be bored with me, I wanted to like...
You're too funny.
So I wanted to make sure that I could reel you all back in so that I could come back again. So I brought some fire agates to show you, and they're the best I've seen. So wait till you see these. You'll put some light on them, and you'll say, oh my God, you have purple, blue, and red. And I'll go, you're damn right I do, and I got a whole cart full. Now, do you want to see the best fire agate? Do you want to see the best fire agate I've ever seen before? Mounted in 14 karat gold. It's peacock fire agate, everybody. It's blue, purple, and green, and it's like really electric blue, purple, and green. And I mean, when I say electric, I mean, it has got the most beautiful, Did you see it? Look, Mari, hold on.
Yes,
Watch this. Watch. Everybody, if Mari screams, it's good. You ready? Oh.
Oh, that's beautiful. Like an opal.
Look
Like
at you.
like
Can you do a
opal.
cartwheel? I know you're going to do a cartwheel. I feel it coming. Do you want to see an opal? Do you want to see? You asked for opal. Yes. This is opal. But I don't think you saw this one.
Okay.
You ready?
Okay.
But you got to make it really good. So they're like, what does he have? Okay, you ready?
Whoa, that's like fire again.
But it's opal.
Look at the light in the inside deep.
Yeah, go crazy.
No.
Okay, no. So this opal, this you guys have to see. So I brought this to like wet the whistle the next time. You're gonna go nuts. You're gonna lose your minds. And does anyone like Peridot? Does anyone like Peridot at all? Do you? Oh, look at the hands. What is going on?
Peridot.
What on earth just happened? So
That's a Hawaiian diamond.
So I decided that because I'm selfish and greedy, I wanted the best peridot I could ever find. I wanted the best. So I reached out and I took a mere 31.5 carat, top color, top clarity, and it took a year and 4 months for Mike Saxon in Cleveland to set it in this industrial diamond and 14 karat gold ring. So if you want to marvel at a peridot and go completely ballistic, you are all eyeing me like I'm gonna jump him in the parking lot. So I have got to tell you though that I had to, and it had to be cushion cut. There are specifics, I had my list. It took 8 years for me to find this. So it took 8 years to source the center stone. And I had 4 sent to me, and I said, 2 olive, 2 brown, oval, not what I asked for, next. So that's why. Does everyone like landscape? Yeah, landscape. So Navajo, and when Richard and Kathy, I went to Richard and Kathy's house very frequently. We were inseparable. She called me her heart son, by the way. She was stuck with me. What can I say? She had no choice. I went to Richard's, and Richard marveled at this because he said how difficult it is to put such a large table on a stone, and to get such a beautiful polish. But this is Navajo, and what's wonderful is the scene continues from the bracelet onto the ring. So it was a match set. And the same Navajo silversmith made the ring and the bracelet, because normally you'll find the bracelet or the ring. We all know that. But you won't find both together. Circa 1940 on the set with this. So take a look at this when you come up. Hopi silversmiths. I could do another, if you want 12 more, presentations, count me in. Hopi silversmiths. This is by Yoyoki, and it's a spinner. So this does spin. So it's double-sided. So there's the maze on the front, and then the dancers on the back, and on a great chain, and then there's this one, because I couldn't stop at one, because I had to have every version I could find. And look at how robust that chain is. Can you imagine laboring over a sterling silver chain that thick these days? The workmanship of these past... Do you love that? So the workmanship on these past artists, and then 3 pins because I wanted the good, the better, and the best. So I got the good Hopi brooch, silver overlay. So 2 sheets of silver, one that's pierced out, soldered down to another. Very direct, very simple, but the power in these things is unbelievable. As soon as I touch them, I go crazy. So there's the good, and there's the better, and then there's the best. Because I didn't want just one version, I had to have all 3. Turquoise beads. Before I go too crazy, turquoise beads, and I wanted to wear them en masse. These are all separate necklaces, and they came out of a closed jewelry store from the 1960s. So these are before, they're like probably around 1950 or so, but I love the shell beads, and then I did love those. So I kept that as a collection. That's not gonna stay in my permanent collection, but it's in there just for now until, I sell them. 2 Santo Domingo necklaces. These are shell inlay turquoise. Of course, the one on the right is far earlier. It's bound with its original cord on the back. So these things are really, really fragile. That's why I don't take them out very often. And when I do, I just put them in a museum exhibition behind glass, and then I don't worry about them. But many of these things have traveled. And then the one on the other side is silver beaded and slightly newer than this one. But I love that they inlaid the turquoise on the natural shell. So there's the seashell that they inlaid on. I didn't bring...
Inlaid on the shell?
Oh yeah, the turquoise is inlaid on the shell. Wow. See, and then this one too.
Ooh.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
This one is 40s. This one is late 30s. 40s, 30s. Yeah.
They inlay on the shells.
What's that?
How did they inlay turquoise on the
You know what? When you look at this, there is a grout that is like a beige and tan grout that actually holds the little tiles together. But you can see on this one specifically, and then on this one, this is interesting because this is definitely some sort of resin, because there is like a almost like they crushed up or did like metal shavings in between. It's very odd the way that that's constructed on the surface, but almost industrial, some sort of industrial epoxy of some sort on that one, and then polished over, so like sanded down and then polished over. But what I loved about it is that the stones in this one weren't treated at all, so that coral's natural and the turquoise is, but absolutely beautiful on both of these. And then you can see the natural shell for Santo Domingo, a turquoise necklace that I wear all the time, so I'm sure you've all seen me with that one before, because who doesn't like the biggest dinner plate you could ever get? Now, something that I wanted to talk about really quick, because I never want someone to think that my confidence is arrogance, because that's tiring and disgusting. What I want people to understand about me is I live this, I breathe this, I've never stopped at anything, and I never will. I was born to do this, and I've often made jokes about people are born into doing what they're supposed to do, like doctors are supposed to heal people, attorneys are supposed to lie. so I had to do it. I had to do it. I know, right? Is there any attorneys here? Am I getting sued? No. Woo! All right. So, but it's a joke. It's a joke. So, I do want to say that when I've constructed the collection, it's been a labor of love, and it's been a truthful journey. And to be able to do this and to acquire the things, I don't know what else to say, but this is further testament that this is the bracelet that came out of the First People's Museum that I mentioned earlier. I don't know. I don't feel like I deserve to own it in a way, but it was deaccessioned from a museum, and someone had to step forward, and I think it was me in another museum. So I could have just bowed out, but I wasn't sure that it was going to go to the right place. So I fought like crazy. I have the original receipt, which I kind of don't want to like talk price, but I have the original receipt, and this is from 9/18 of 2004. Yeah, I don't want to look at that right now, but I do want to say that this is very important. It's Plains Indian. It's Plains Indian, and the way that this nickel silver is treated, hand rocker engraved on the surface. And when you talk about this again, like people at an estate sale would run to get this. I understand because I bought it too. It's in my collection, but this is the one that truly matters. It just resonates with me so deeply. And let me explain another part of this is when I went to Hartville Flea Market, and I rolled up early. I was ready to go by 4:15. The sun had just rised, and I was ready to go. And sure enough, a dealer put these out in her case, and so I said, can I see those? And she said yes. So she handed them to me, and I couldn't. I got like lightheaded. I got weirded out. I'm like, this can't be real. Like, am I dreaming this? Am I really awake? Is this really going on? So I thought immediately that these were Plains Indian. I thought that they were Plains Indian. I knew that they were pre-1900. I just knew that. So let me back myself up and say, as you know, someone who knows a lot, I'm constantly relearning and learning new things. So I slow myself down because I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to tell someone something is something and not have it be. There's a lot of that going on right now, especially on YouTube. I'm seeing it a lot. And I don't want to go around correcting people, but I also don't want things like this to be not thought of as what they are. So I never said publicly that these were Plains Indian. What I did say is they are German silver or coin silver. So they are, I believe they're coin silver technically. And they are technically rocker engraved. So it's a matched pair of armlets that's rocker engraved. Rocker engraving was a technique used very, very early, extremely early. So finding one of these, I would have said, well, I've got a treasure. I have a national treasure now because I have a matched pair of them. So what I've now figured out is they may not be Plains Indian. They might be. They may not be. The reason for that is I was smart enough to come home and to dig in my library, a book I've never touched. I've never touched this book. And late one night, I couldn't sleep, probably because I had my ailing father and my grieving mother on my brain. And so what did I do? Didn't turn on the internet, didn't want to watch any TV shows, most certainly didn't want to watch the news. So I went in and I found this book and I thought, Indian ceremonial and trade silver. Interesting. So I opened the book and mysteriously on the inside here it says, pair of armbands, Peter and Anna William Bateman, late 18th century, right? So we're talking 1700s. Yeah. So there's a matched pair of armlets that are rocker engraved. Different because they have a seam. So different because they have a seam, but they have that same channel. They have that same border, that same channel, same exact construction, same exact material. You can see the gauge of the metal is identical to what's in this book from 1700s, right? So I go a little further and I go, I don't think these are Plains Indian anymore. I also found the fact that I have these in my collection, never knew what they were. Guess what I did? I would find them here and there and everywhere. And I thought, what are these pieces off of? 1700s trade silver for 50 cents here and there, now worth hundreds of dollars a piece, if not $1,000 a piece. So I went further into the book and I found another pair of armbands, Jonas or Widow Schindler, Quebec, Montreal. So these might be Canadian, Ottawa, transient, not sure, still not 100%, don't know yet, still trying to figure it out. Why do I talk about it publicly? Because I want everybody to know I do my research before I start yammering and lecturing people. I still don't know if they're Plains Indian or if they're Ottawa Indian. I don't know yet, but I'm gonna figure it out because they belong in a museum. Thank you, Kristen. So it says right here, these are 1760 to 1823, and they're the same basic construction, slightly wider, same oxidation, and guess what? Same rocker engraving as what I have in my hands. Let's go one step further because I still have your attention. Looked at the back of the book, and absolutely 100% now, completely sure of the age. So right here, it just says late 18th century. These are from the 1700s, you guys. Imagine a matched pair of coin silver cuff bracelets, rocker engraved from the 1700s, staying together and showing up at Ohio flea market at 4:15 in the morning. And yet I was the one that as soon as I touched him and felt the energy on him, I said, they're going home with me and I'm gonna figure this out later, you know? It's all about intuition. It's that little guide on your shoulder that says to do something. Don't ever doubt your intuition because it's there for a reason, you know? But you can see in the book that it's got that same kind of banding on the outside, the same exact treatment. And then when I studied this with a loop, do you know that that banding is completely hand hammered? That banding on the outside that's so directional and so, quote, perfect, that's completely hand hammered from the opposite side of this matched pair of rocker engraved bracelets. A very, very, very important person's bracelets. Extremely important. Have I tried them on and wore them? I did. Did I feel it slightly disrespectful? Took them off. I've never put them on since. So I won't do it. The rocker engraving and that directional design of the artist that had the thought process of doing this, I could talk about those in another talk at another time so I don't lose anyone. Any questions? A lot of smiles. And again, I just have to say, thank you all for your attention and your kindness. I do really appreciate it very much. Yes?
So this turquoise jewelry that I've seen over the years, was it only for like a ceremonial day? The Indians would not wear it every day, would they?
According to the photographs in my books, it was pretty much used almost on a daily basis.
Really?
Yeah. Bracelets specifically, when they were on, I don't think they took them off. The wear patterns on the early ones, especially across the stones, they look like they've been worn for nonstop for 60 years. Great question. I do not think that they frequently took it off. I don't think so. Especially their beaded necklaces, I think they stayed on basically 24/7.
So that probably gave them status in their tribe.
Correct.
Okay.
Always delineated who was the most important. Yep. And appreciated. I'm going to end the video, but I want more questions. I'm just going to end this for YouTube. So everyone, just thank everyone for YouTube for watching. A little round of applause. Okay.